back, everybody, to another episode of the Bros and Cons podcast, where we're reviewing the Last of Us series streaming on HBO. This is an episode that I'm really excited to talk about. Vico, I know you are too.
Mm-hmm.
This is the winter sequence or segment of the game, I think, is arguably both of our favorite sections of the game.
By far, yeah.
And I think they did some really interesting stuff in this episode.
Very. And I have to start off by saying it's hitting a milestone here. So episode 8 hit a series high of 8.1 million viewers, which is 74% up from the premiere.
74%, that's insane.
Yeah, it's almost doubled.
Yeah.
It's almost doubled.
That's amazing.
It's crazy. Yeah, like
Dude.
Not many shows have done that.
No, so... I feel like at this point it's not just fans of the video game, it's folks that just appreciate good storytelling.
Yeah, and a lot of people are hearing about it through word of mouth, and it's like just water cooler talk for people, you know? And they're like, oh, I'm gonna check it out too. And yeah, it's so weird. It's like I'm hearing about it just from like just people that would probably never play the video games, you know, and I'm seeing it in like pop culture and just like, you know, off the cuff. And I'm like, oh, that's really cool to see that now like everyone can enjoy this story.
Yes, I have a bunch of my friends at work who would never play the video games. As in, like, there's a mid-60s man in his mid-60s, I think, who talks about the video game. He's awesome. And then my parents, they love this show. So it's really cool to see. I'm super happy to hear that.
Yeah. I passed by another billboard for it today too. It's still awesome. So weird. It's so weird.
It's super strange. It's so weird as fans of the video game. And I couldn't be happier for everyone involved in this project.
That's great. Yep.
So I want to start off by talking about the cold open, essentially, of David and his community. Now, one of the biggest, I guess I should say, expansions right off the bat is the heavy religion.
Yeah, and I wouldn't necessarily say it's a change, but they because they do, I guess, allude to it in the video game version, but they never the banner and
the lodge.
But they never ever like go into that at all. And you never even see any women in the town. It's just kind of like you're kind of secluded when you play the game, so you really only see David and James and then like a handful of other guys that you encounter. Like that's it. So they really humanize this group.
It made it spooky right off the get-go, or right at the get-go, because as players of the game, we kind of know what this guy is, what this guy stands for, and this put a culty spin on it.
Yeah,
which is a piece of dialogue later in the episode. But there's that moment where that little girl is crying, and she says, "Can we bury him now?" And I think I guessed it. I guessed who she was talking about.
Yeah.
But not entirely. I don't know. It was a moment that, like, I'm telling you right now, chills raced up my spine over and over again in this episode.
Yep. Repeatedly. Yeah. It was, oh.
But it was the calm way that David handled that situation that you're just like, I think even stepping away as a fan and just watching it as a consumer was like, there's something not right here.
Yeah, you can tell from the get-go that, you know, I think just something about him is so off. Like you just pick up on it that there's some ulterior motive to this guy and what he wants out of everything.
And let's give a shout out once again. We said it with Melanie Lynskey. I'm going to say it again with David. A quiet villain is in my mind, the most effective villain.
Agreed. Yeah.
There's so much more to unpack there.
And then just going back to the people of the town, I thought like the makeup and hair group did just such a good job of making these people look like they were haggard and like malnourished. Like everyone looked like they were starving.
Yes, that was something that I didn't immediately pick up on until there were a couple of close-ups, and I'm like, oh shit, I'm glad they did that. That was like an attention to detail that excellent.
Just really sold it for sure. Like you can in the game I didn't get the sense that they were like starving.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't get the sense that they were starving because of lack of food. It just seemed like they made a choice to be cannibals instead, because for whatever reason.
That's a great point.
Here, it's humanized them a little bit, where it's like this was a very difficult decision that they made because of lack of food in this harsh winter.
So. Well, and something that we find out a little bit later is most of them don't know.
Yeah, that too. Like a lot of people, it's like only maybe a handful of people know that that's what they're eating, which is also just so messed up.
It's disturbing. Yeah. There's another sort of theme of these leaders not being transparent with the people that they're leading. And I think that it just keeps reiterating the difference between someone like Marlene. Was that her name?
Yeah.
It just keeps emphasizing the difference between someone like Marlene, someone like David, and someone like
oh, you mean Maria?
Maria.
Yeah, huge stark difference. Like you have Jackson, that is about as well-rounded of a town as you can get, that has decided to give its power to the people, versus these essentially, fascist style. Or
one person has one person
has
rules
all the power.
And
which is just never okay.
No.
That's never gonna end well.
So a fun addition that we get to this episode is Troy Baker.
Yes.
Who plays James. He's just good. I want to see him in more stuff. He's a fantastic voice actor, but I want to see him in more stuff.
I do too.
I think he delivered a really understated performance in a good way.
Me too.
You saw all the doubt and all of the sort of turmoil going on in his head by just a look to David.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he really nailed this role. Like, I'm glad they gave him a role of like a minor character, but like still not like super minor. It's not like they just handed him a cameo like I think he was expecting, or a lot of people were expecting. Like, he actually got to play a pretty important part in the series, which was really cool.
Yeah. And he was perfect in it. He was perfect in this role. I really liked this.
And I gotta throw it back while we're on the topic.
That's what I was just about to
do. You go ahead.
Okay, so for anyone who doesn't know, Troy Baker was the original voice of Joel in the video games, and David was played by Nolan North, who a lot of people might recognize as Nathan Drake in the Uncharted series. So Vic and I went to Comic-Con one year.
3, 2, 1, flashing this up here so you all can see it. There we are. And you go ahead, bro, and you explain this photo in all its awkward glory.
Vic and I went to Comic-Con one year, specifically because Troy Baker and Nolan North were going to be there signing autographs, and it's the only time that I've ever paid for a meet and greet kind of situation. And we were so fucking excited. Well, Vic had her glide cam, and no one really in the security line, you get shit taken away from you. And Vic didn't think that maybe I'll get my glide cam taken away.
Oh, they specifically told me you can take it with you.
Oh, I forgot about that part.
Yeah. And then I get to the front and they're like, what are you doing? Yeah. I'm like, okay, let me hand over $5,000 worth of camera gear to you.
And like, your camera was on the glide cam. It was on the glide cam. And the person who took it away from old Vico here took it in a really awkward way, and you just saw the glide cam with the camera go whoop.
He
almost hit the table.
He almost got fired right then and there.
By who?
The supervisor. The supervisor scolded him because I just said, "Here, careful," and then he almost plummeted the thing to the ground.
But so we're gonna flash it one more time on the screen so that you can just look at Vic's face.
Yeah, that was taken about 15 seconds after my entire camera setup was almost dropped on the ground and I didn't know how to act.
And you look at my face because I didn't have expensive equipment almost dropped, and I was really fucking excited to meet Nolan North. And then you look at Troy Baker and Vic. It's the funniest thing I've ever seen.
His hand on my shoulder.
This is my favorite picture that we've ever taken together. I love it so much.
Flustered.
We call that face the Vic.
Yep. That's the Vic face. Oh, good times.
Good times.
Memories. Anyway.
When we flash back, not flashback, but we flash over to Ellie still trying to take care of Joel.
Mm-hmm.
And there's something about her putting the water on his lips.
Yeah.
That was it. We're seeing caretaker Ellie.
Mm-hmm.
And there's something about that just like got to me.
Right.
Just a side of her that we've never seen before. And they're able to do that in this medium.
Mm-hmm.
We saw it in the game, but it's something like there's something a little bit more gentle about it in this show.
Yeah.
She decides that she can't stay here. They are starving.
Mm-hmm.
There's one piece of jerky left, and she decides to take the gun and go out to hunt. Again, this is something that we've talked about, but I do like that they don't make shooting easy. When she goes to take down a deer, she doesn't do it in a clean way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a part of me that was like a little disappointed that she didn't somehow inherit a bow, but it makes sense. Like that wouldn't make sense.
Exactly.
It's just video game side of me is like, I was excited for that.
Yeah. But, we might get it in part 2 in season 2.
I think we might. But yeah, no, it just wouldn't make sense.
I had the exact opposite thought of you, which is, I'm so glad they didn't give her a bow. That would have been so contrived.
It wouldn't make any sense at all.
No, it wouldn't.
No. But yeah, like they showed how hard it is to hunt.
Mm-hmm.
I've never hunted, but I assume it's hard.
No. I assume it's very hard. I assume shooting a gun accurately is pretty hard as well.
I've fished. That's different.
She's starving. David's community is starving. That's where they meet, is in front of a dead deer.
Yeah.
One of the things that I really like is that it was commented upon that Ellie's really quiet. Mm-hmm. When she's hunting, or when she wants to be, Ellie can be
very quiet.
And this is something that you brought up too. I loved her performance here. Mm-hmm. She lowered her voice. She tried really hard to keep the gun up. She yelled.
Yeah, like
she's amazing.
She's doing her best to be intimidating, mm-hmm. which you can tell. It really does feel like a little kid trying to act like a tough adult. Mm-hmm. But like it's believable.
Mm-hmm. I like something that they brought up in the podcast too, was that the gun is so heavy. She's so mm-hmm. little. Mm-hmm. And her just trying to keep it up, keep it straight, keep it pointed at them.
Yeah.
It's just really good touches. I can't say enough about Bella Ramsey. I really can't.
Yeah. Nailed it. Like absolutely. We'll get into that later, but I think she's mm-hmm. doing a fantastic job.
Mm-hmm. I love too that Ellie is so fucking smart. She reached down while still pointing the gun.
Yeah.
And got all of their emptied the chamber. I don't know guns. Emptied the chamber for their rifles. It was just it's just good. It's good attention to detail.
Yeah.
So much like in the game, David tells let's call him Jackson. David tells James to go and get her the medicine. Mm-hmm. And he does it rather begrudgingly. I think that James in this episode is all about being pragmatic.
Yeah, definitely.
I don't think that he's evil. I think he's just pragmatic.
Yeah, agreed. So I think one of the most there's a lot of famous scenes and iconic scenes in The Last of Us, but this scene of them sitting at the campfire is kind of a turning point. Mm-hmm. Because the people have been scary, mm-hmm. but this is the first time where I think David is hands down the scariest thing in this entire story.
Yeah, me too.
Because what has happened is the apocalypse has allowed people like him to really thrive, mm-hmm. and take advantage of other people. Mm-hmm. It's horrifying.
Act upon. He's one of the people that acts upon his worst impulses.
Yeah, And he knows exactly what he's doing this entire time. Like, he has so many pawns in play. Like, James was just, he was using him as a pawn. Like, James didn't see what was happening here, but David already knew. He's like, I know who this is. And so he's already trying to manipulate everyone around him, especially Ellie, into, you know, doing what he wants and getting what he wants.
And so far he's been successful at it.
Yeah. Yeah. And she's got her guard up real high. Like, she's really good at not giving him anything and just getting what she needs. It's funny because he probably didn't think that penicillin was going to do anything other than get her to trust him. But he still inadvertently saved Joel's life anyway.
Yeah.
You know? So I guess things happen for a reason. So.
Oh no. And here in this conversation, he reveals quite a bit about himself without waxing philosophical, which he does later on in the episode. But just to try to calm her down, gain her trust, he reveals that he used to be a math teacher.
Which is horrifying and disgusting.
Horrifying.
Because the implications behind that are just, ugh.
Awful.
Yeah.
Awful. He even goes as far to like just try to disarm her. He even goes as far as when she says, so you're in a cult. He was like, yeah, you got me there. I'm a preacher. And you're like, oh fuck, stop it. It. Hate to say he was great, but he was great.
Yeah.
A fucking psycho.
Just, oh.
And this conversation was really well paced too. That he just draws closer and closer to revealing that he knows that it was Ellie and her partner who were the ones that killed the guy that stabbed Joel.
Yeah. And then he tries to humanize that guy to her. To
he had a daughter.
Yeah, to be like
the same age as you.
Yeah, like you didn't just kill some random guy, you killed someone that has a family, you know, trying to get into her head. So yeah, just they built out that conversation a little bit more than they did in the game version.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Enough. And it was a fascinating and horrible viewing experience,
because you get the sense at this point too that he's a predator in every sense of the word, just trying to disarm his prey. And it's fascinating to watch and absolutely horrifying. So when James does come back with the medicine, he's once again ready to kill Ellie immediately. But David, the reasons for which we'll find out later, but David's like, nope, give her the medicine, let her go. When Ellie gets back to Joel, I want to talk about that syringe. As a tattooed person, it's hard for me to, not hard, but it's funny for me to admit that I hate needles. I hate intravenous medicine. And she just squished that shit right into his wound.
Deep in there.
And
that needle was long. It was a long boy.
Yes, it was a long boy. So that works, right?
Yeah, so I had to look this up because I was curious, and antibiotics work within like 1 to 3 days for penicillin specifically, and directly from the National Institute of Health, injection of antibiotics directly into the wound cavity has been found to be more effective. So she did the right thing. She definitely guessed, but she guessed right. And I will say, because I feel like it can almost feel like a little bit of a plot hole how fast he gets better. As someone who has started to go septic myself, they work fast. I went from feeling like I was dying to like I was on top of the world in 2 hours. So, not a plot hole. They work, and they work quick.
That was a thing that I didn't know about you.
Worst day of my life.
I didn't know you almost went septic.
Yeah.
Fuck. At the same time that this is going on, we see some meat, some cubed meat in David's community. And there's hints towards some more people know about this, I think, than David knows about, because the cook's like, what is this? The guy goes, just venison. And it's not just venison.
Not only that, but like,
don't worry about it, it's just venison.
She also didn't have the decency to even like put a little salt and pepper on that shit.
Well, also, you know what's funny that you say that, because when she did that, I was like, oh, we're not putting a nice sear on it before we put it in the stew.
Just boil it.
We don't want to put a touch of caramelization on top before we boil it.
Like, at least make it taste better.
So yeah, I think more people, and that is confirmed when they bring in a nice fresh deer. You're like, oh, yep, nope, wasn't venison. All right.
Yeah, I love how he walks in with that deer and he's like, I got a deer, and everyone's just like, you got one now? Like, that's the face of half the people there, is like, what are we eating?
Oh. Yeah. Oh no. Yeah, there's a couple of interesting smaller things here before the big thing that we want to talk about in this scene. The biggest little thing, I think, is that everyone has these small bowls of food, and David gets like a dinner
platter.
plate.
It's like a platter.
Yeah, full of food. That's just this. You get hints of it before, but here we see his diabolical narcissism.
Also, the fact that he knows exactly what it is and he's happy to eat that much of it. Makes it that much worse. It's pretty gross.
It's pretty gross. So the little girl that we saw crying about her dad earlier doesn't even interrupt his little speech. She just, I think she says probably what she's feeling, but also I think she says what she thinks he wants to hear.
Yeah.
And he hits her, which was shocking, but also in classic abuser behavior fashion, he offers his hand to her. Come to me, it's okay. I'll help you up into this chair. You're my child. Oh, this is another thing that just sent chills racing down my spine.
Yeah. Yeah, just it's like the first clear, like, you kind of get like unsettled about him, and you don't know why, but this is like the first clear evidence that he's like not a good person.
And he's a violent man,
a very violent person. Yeah.
A violent and narcissistic man, and he's so dangerous.
Exactly. Like, he's clearly using religion to just be in control of other people.
I think he uses religion to calm people down enough with something that feels familiar to them.
Yeah.
Enough to control them, which is a tactic of bad rulers.
Yep. Exactly.
So this was just a really alarming scene.
Yeah, in every sense of the word. Yeah. Like at this point, Ellie and Joel are both in trouble.
Yeah, this is the most dangerous person that they've faced so far. Everyone else felt handleable.
Yes.
Not this guy.
No, not at all.
Ellie shoots up that wound cavity and goes outside to, in a really sweet moment, get snow for the horse to drink.
Yeah.
Ellie, you're so good. She finds out pretty quickly that a few men in David's community have come. They've tracked her down, and she does the smart and the brave thing, which is put a knife in Joel's hands and get out of there.
Yeah, and Joel is just like still like coming out of it.
I don't know what this is.
You can tell, like, I don't think he's gonna do anything with that knife.
Yeah.
At least that's how it felt, but he gets that strength at least when he needs it.
So this shows so this again highlights a big difference between James and David, where James just wants to get it over with. She's another mouth to feed. He doesn't particularly like her.
Yep.
Let's just get it over with now.
Mm-hmm.
And David is really threatening in the way that he makes certain that they keep her alive.
Yeah, especially when I think it's really interesting. James says maybe that's God's will to let her die, essentially.
Yeah.
And that is when David gives him just that horrible look, like
he knows that
don't
he's
you
not
dare.
completely under his control.
That, but also I think it was offense to David, because David sees himself as a god, essentially.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. It's his narcissism, but also he had a sense of it in the very beginning of the episode that James is not under his control, right? 100%. Yep. And I think that he just reminded him of it right now.
Oh yeah, that too. There's a lot going on there in that scene. Yeah.
Really upsetting. James is smart. James shoots the horse. Makes you sad. And Ellie gets concussed, and James is about to shoot her. Yeah. When David fires his rifle in the air, and the looks on all those guys' faces, like, you can tell that if this doesn't end, if this community, this guy's control over these people doesn't end soon, it will end. It's going to end one way or the other, because these guys, I think, are starting to shake loose their shackles a little bit. So David picks up Ellie, and I just kept thinking to myself, don't fucking touch her. Just don't touch her.
Yeah, oh no. It was so uncomfortable that you saw him, like, pick her up and then carry her away. Like, yeah.
Yeah. 3 men stay behind to find Joel.
Yep. They find him all right.
They find him all right. One of whom is dispatched in glorious fashion by Joel. Yep. Pedro brings such a good physicality to this Joel that we talked a little bit before about. This is like, he's feral again. Yeah. Ellie's in trouble. I don't know where Ellie is. So I'm gonna be an animal here.
Yeah. And he truly was, like, everything about that scene was just pure survival. Like, he did not have the energy to do that.
Yeah. But I thought it was
he
great.
Pushed himself.
It was great that he stabbed the guy, but then had to hold on to him for balance. Yeah. It's just, it's good. It's taking away all the invincibility that we see in the games and grounding it.
And he had to make that one stab count. Like, it had to be lethal, or it would not have worked and been enough.
So we catch up with Ellie as she's waking up in a cage. Do you hear that in my throat?
I didn't.
Okay. So we catch up with Ellie when she's waking up in a cage, and she and David have a conversation that once again just shows his narcissism. I think that's one of the biggest things about this character is he tells her, didn't you hear what I just said? Yeah. You should be grateful for me.
Right.
I told them not to kill you. And Ellie's giving not an inch.
Not an inch. That's the other thing, is it's like she still is giving him nothing and putting up a fight, like, and you can tell she's, like, still, like, coming out of this concussion. As someone who's also had a concussion, I can say that it is really hard to just, like, keep all your thoughts straight, and especially in a scene like this, I can't imagine.
So. That one I did know about. Yeah. We should have, like, just a mashup of, as someone who David's also, I mean, he's a master manipulator, so he also touches on Ellie's worst fear without knowing is her fear of being alone.
Yeah, I think he really kind of hits her there, like, hits her where it hurts, because like, he doesn't know that that's what she's afraid of, and she's, like, told Sam, like, my biggest fear is being alone. So as the audience, we know right away that probably got to her, and I think you can tell, like, now she's, like, terrified, and that's where she's kind of like, because when you see her in the next scene, she's working really, when you see her in the next scene again in the cage, like she's working really, really hard to get out of there. Like it kind of like it scared her, but then that lit a fire under her to like get out of this situation on her own.
Yeah. And I think that he does know to a point that is her biggest fear, because she has been fighting so hard to save him.
Yeah. I mean, she's a kid too. Like, of course it's scary to be on your own when you're a kid.
So David leaves her to stew with what he said, which again, he's a master manipulator.
Yeah.
And in that time that he's away, we see Joel do something that is very familiar to us who have played the games, is he kneecaps someone and has two people in a room. One person points out, I think this is taken directly from the game too. One person points out where it is, and the game is, you point to this, it better be the same as what this person says, or I'll rip your kneecap out. But then he says, oh, I believe him, and then kills a dude. It's again that we're seeing a calculating, smart, brutal Joel.
Yeah. I like that they didn't reveal how he got these two guys tied up. You're just like, what did he do? You know, like you saw him be smart.
Yeah.
So I think it's better left up to the imagination of how he got these two guys, trapped and tied up and everything. Because he couldn't have done much. Know he had to have used his smarts for it.
Because even when he stabbed the first guy, he still had to like lean up against him because he's tired.
Yeah, like you can still tell he's like barely holding on. But he's just a brute force, and he's in dad mode.
Yes.
So of course he's gonna power through it to find her and make sure she's safe. And penicillin works fast. So
as someone who's had sepsis. So we get to, I think, a pivotal moment in the episode. The biggest conversation between David and Ellie, once Ellie has seen a human ear underneath a butcher table. So let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I love that they didn't show what she was looking at right away. You just know she saw something that absolutely scared her to death. And you're wondering what it is for like a good few seconds, and then they finally show it when David looks at it, and you're like, oh. It's like, if anyone hadn't pieced together like what they were eating and doing and all that, like you definitely had at this point. There were no questions left as to what was actually happening here.
Yes.
And now she's terrified. She's like, oh, they're gonna eat me.
Yeah, so that at this point is Ellie's biggest fear, is that they're gonna chop her up into little pieces and eat her, but she doesn't quite know what kind of person David is.
Right. Like there's still that mystery. Like she definitely knows he can't be trusted. But
we don't
that much.
And she doesn't know, and we don't really know as of yet why he's saving the life of this little girl.
And that is quickly revealed to everyone what's actually going on here. And he kind of starts his little grooming speech, which is just so disgusting. And he tries to build her up in that classic tactic of like, we're the same, which in a lot of ways, sure, they kind of are the same.
I think that the only piece of truth that he really tells is, you have a violent heart. And the second he says, I've always had a violent heart, something switches in his eyes.
Yeah.
He suddenly, there's this hunger, there's this anger, the veil is dropped.
Yeah.
And it's terrifying.
Well, he's also a leader, and he's telling her he's a leader, and that she's a leader through like the whole sheep and wolf analogy and whatever, and you see a kind of a parallel to the last episode where the captain was telling her, you're a leader. So it's like she's finally got someone else telling her that. Like she knows that about herself already. But the way in which David is doing it is so sinister, and not for her own benefit or her own good. It's just for his own selfish needs, which is just horrible.
And once again, Ellie is so fucking smart. Like, when he reaches to her, he thinks he has her. When
Yeah,
he
he
reaches to
does.
the bars, he thinks he has her.
Yeah, she's somehow like kind of manipulated him into being
Mm-hmm.
comfortable enough to do that
Mm-hmm.
just by her facial expressions and body
Mm-hmm.
language. So
Mm-hmm.
she's actually like kind of flipped the tables a little bit.
There's that O that she does.
Yeah.
Fuck, man.
Oh, and once she actually like breaks his finger and then delivers that line
Mm-hmm.
afterwards,
Mm-hmm.
um, that line was so good. Where
Now we're
she's
seeing
just,
feral Ellie. Like
yes,
they like Joel and Ellie are getting closer and closer to being
each
each
other.
other.
Yeah. And I think this is a good point to kind of go into where you're really starting to see the stark differences between Ashley Johnson, who played
Mm-hmm.
Ellie in the game, versus Bella Ramsey, who plays it in the
Mm-hmm.
show, where um their Ellies are both fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
I love Ashley Johnson as Ellie. Like, she's always going to be the first Ellie to me.
Yeah.
But Bella Ramsey has proven time and time again throughout each episode that she has such a distinct take on the character that I think is a
Yes.
little more grounded in being a kid. Like,
Mm-hmm.
there's a way that Ashley Johnson's Ellie is more sure of herself, I feel like. Like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, she still has those same features of she's afraid of being alone, she's scared all the time, but she really doesn't give any of it away. She's really
Yeah.
good at
She's
playing
locked up.
tough, locked up
Mm-hmm.
tight. She's good at playing tough. She's, you know, she remains lighthearted a little bit longer in
Mm-hmm.
the series. Um, Whereas you really feel all of these events taking the toll on Ellie and Bella Ramsey's take on the character.
Yes.
Like,
That's yeah. Keep
it's
going.
much more nuanced and it's vulnerable. Like, she plays Ellie in a much more vulnerable way that just works for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that she's having that take on this character because she's
Mm-hmm.
still a badass, you
Yeah.
know, like, she's still in every sense of the word.
She's still amazing, but
Yeah.
this feels so truthful
Yeah.
to the
Mhm.
character to me, because we see in the game too that after the events of this episode in this segment of the game, she is changed
Mhm.
completely.
Mhm.
And the vulnerability, good word, that Bella Ramsey has brought to this character to this point makes this make more sense.
Mhm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
not that it's not believable in the game, not that a situation like this wouldn't lead to such a switch, but there's something about this that, like, this here's the natural progression
Mhm.
of it.
Oh, yeah.
Something like this would have a different kind of effect on this Ellie versus
Mhm.
video game Ellie.
Yeah. Like, they very much are the exact same character, but you're starting to really see a differentiation on them,
Yes.
you know, which I'm really loving.
And
Like,
I'm glad you pointed that out.
yeah. I mean, it applies to Joel too,
Mm-hmm.
and Pedro Pascal versus Troy Baker's Joel's, but there's
Mm-hmm.
something about the way that Bella Ramsey is playing Ellie that's just so vulnerable, and I
Mm-hmm.
really love her take on the character. But she's
Me
also
too.
like, there's stronger, I think every emotion is just a little bit stronger in her,
Mm-hmm.
and I really love that.
Me too.
Yeah.
There are pieces of herself that she just never let go of,
Mhm.
and it's really just exquisite to watch.
Mhm.
She's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, incredible.
So I want to talk quickly about just the death of James,
Mhm.
Troy Baker's character, because like here too we see this switch in David. Like, he's
Mhm.
proving that, yeah, he's a violent motherfucker.
Yeah.
And they put her up on the butcher block, and Ellie is so fucking smart. Her last resort is to tell them that she's
Mhm.
infected.
Yeah.
And for some reason, even though it's in the game too, but for some reason I wasn't expecting.
Mhm.
So I was like, oh, that's my girl when she said
Yeah.
it. That's brilliant. Like,
Yeah.
who else would think of that?
Right. And I think at this point in her life, she doesn't necessarily know if she can spread the infection.
Mm-hmm.
So for all she knows, she's like, "Hey, maybe it did work," you know?
Yeah.
you know, and
but at least I can tell this guy that.
Yeah, like even if she has no proof yet, like she's like, maybe it's enough to freak him out. And he doesn't buy it still, but James, it scares the shit out of him.
Yeah. Because I mean, David's got tunnel vision at this point, and James is ever the pragmatist, you know?
Yeah, exactly. And that hesitancy on James's part is enough to get them distracted to where she can actually like get out of the situation.
Yes. In gloriously violent fashion, Troy Baker's character James dies. And I'm just like, I'm really happy for him that he got a moment like that for some reason. I know it sounds bad, but that he got a moment like that.
I get the impression based off of the podcast he loved doing it too.
That he was stoked on it. Yeah. And just the callousness of David grabbing the cleaver out of his neck to go and hunt down Ellie. I'm like, fuck.
I know, it's horrible.
Horrifying.
Yeah.
Now this makes sense for the TV show, that she would try to find something hot and pokey to throw at him.
Yeah, because she's very limited here on her resources. Like in the game, she manages to get her knife back, but not here. In this situation, Joel has her backpack, and you see him like walking through the town, carrying it, looking for her, which is really like heartbreaking.
Yeah, and we get the reveal through Joel's eyes too of confirming that these are in fact cannibals.
Yeah.
And I didn't know if they would do it, because in the game you do see like butchered bodies hanging.
Wondering if they would hold that back or not, and sure enough they did not.
They did not.
Yeah. And you also see the horse.
Yeah. No, it was sad, because you don't really get that resolution in the game. I don't think you don't see the horse. It's just sad. I don't know. Yeah. It's just sad.
Yeah.
You feel his desperation. He, especially when he sees the blood stain up to the little, I guess, shed, boat shed, whatever that. Also, really quick, I want to pause and talk about how interesting it is that they chose like such an idyllic location. Like they're in a resort town, and they can't survive there.
No. Well, they picked the Rocky Mountains, which
exactly
is probably pretty nice in the summer, but I mean that sounds miserable in the winter. Yeah, that's actually something I think a lot about. Like with let's say the world goes to shit.
I think about it all the time too.
Like, what do you do? Like in terms of Arizona, where I'm familiar with everything, it makes sense to go to Phoenix in the winter and then take a migration up to like northern Arizona in the summer.
I wouldn't go to Phoenix ever in the apocalypse.
Well, it doesn't have to be Phoenix, but like, you know, I just mean like
south in the
south where it's a warmer climate, and just find an easy migration pattern. These people did not do that.
And they had 20 years to figure it out.
Yeah, and they just picked the most like one of the most habitable areas they could have found.
Yeah, really quick for my little lockbox up here. What QZ did David say he was from?
Pittsburgh.
Pittsburgh?
Which I thought was a nice little game nod, because Pittsburgh was the original Kansas City that they go through. They don't go through Kansas City, they go through Pittsburgh, which has fallen and all that. So I thought that was a nice little game nod.
Also interesting little aside to just give us a hint that a lot of QZs have or are in the process of falling.
Yeah. Yeah. Like there's not many hanging on there. We know there's Boston and Atlanta.
And it's barely hanging on.
In Boston, Atlanta, and I think that's about like, as far as like our knowledge is aware, those are the two that are shown to still be hanging around. So it can't be many. I can't imagine there being more than like 6 to 8. Can't be much. You know, at least on the West Coast, they don't reveal there being any in the game's like history. So it seems like it's really just the East Coast and maybe part of the Midwest that have retained QZs.
Yeah, just an interesting little tidbit in the game.
Definitely.
So this sequence with David and Ellie there's one line that sticks out to me that really, it got me fucked up, dude. It was when David yells, "Don't you know how good I am?" That line, I can't even, there are no words for it for me. I can't find the words for it right now, but I keep harping on about his narcissism, but that's it. Like, in this state that he's in, this crazy state, he has to remind whoever he's trying to control that I am good. I'm doing this.
Yeah.
I am God. And it just, that line really, like, it made me feel so uncomfortable.
Yeah. Playing the game, this was the most tense scene, I think, in the entire game, is when they're going through the lodge, which they made the lodge like exactly like the lodge in the game. Unnerving. Again, how great the production design and set design is in this entire series. But it's nerve-wracking because in the game it's like you have to stab him 3 times and then you can finally like go into the end cutscene, which we see here. So again, they did like a great job of condensing everything, I feel like, into, and it just the meat of the story, like they took what mattered and just put it into like an intense like 50 minutes. Again, like going back to the Ashley Johnson's versus Bella Ramsey kind of thing, the scene in the game again is like just so intense, it's so sad, it's so emotional, but Bella Ramsey delivered in this scene. Like,
She's was rabid,
primal, I think is the word I'm looking for, in just her, like, the way she grabs the machete, she gets the hit, and she gets like a 5 good whacks in, and then she gets to the end of her steam, and then it's like she hits another sprint, goes again. And just the scream that she's letting out is just, it's like it's violent. And it's like this cathartic thing that she's doing, and she's making sure that she gets out of it. And she does, but it, like, you're kind of, I think when you're watching, you're like, at what cost? Like, you're,
and here's the thing is, like, for the similarities between the two of them, that he says, "You have a violent heart. I've always had a violent heart. You're a leader. I'm a leader." Ellie is everything that David isn't. And this scene blurred the lines for her. It snapped something in her. And however, there will be repercussions with her, which I don't think there have ever been moral repercussions for David and his insanity. There will be repercussions for Ellie.
Yeah, definitely. Another interesting change that they did was, because, and this is, I think we're going to kind of see the effects of this in probably the next episode and then season 2, where Joel stops her in the game from whacking this guy to death. Whereas in the show, she finishes it when she finishes it. She's done when she's done. And she just walks out in a daze, just in total shock that she survived this encounter. But I wonder what effect that will have on her mentally in the coming episode and season that we see, because I think, yes, that encounter affected her as a person a ton in the game, but I think this is, I'm fully convinced we're like, not that I was never convinced that she would play a great season 2 version of Ellie, because season 2 Ellie is entirely different from season 1 Ellie.
100%.
And this scene alone convinced me that she's got what it takes to play this character. But I just wonder what effect that is going to have on her as a character as she goes on.
I think she'll come to the realization that it's part of her, like that violence, that is part of her nature. That'll be interesting to see.
I do love, though, that Joel found her finally, and I like that he might not have been there to save her from that moment, but he was, for the first time, really emotionally there for her.
Yes.
In the way that she's been needing him to be there for her.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like she is just so distressed and in shock, and like she at first, like, she doesn't realize who it is, but
Mm-hmm.
he makes sure that she knows that he's there.
Mm-hmm.
And finally gets her to calm down. And she's able to, you know, she can't even describe what she just went through because she's just in such total shock, but he's just letting her know that he's there for her.
Yeah, I think this too is where the two meet and start to overlap.
Yeah,
because now Joel is open like Ellie was, and Ellie has committed a really violent act like Joel is always capable of.
Yeah.
So they're the same.
Mm-hmm.
They just haven't been able to admit it to each other yet.
Yeah, definitely. And he's finally accepted that this is his surrogate daughter, essentially. Yeah.
The baby girl line made me cry. Mm-hmm. I started crying. Yeah. Like a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. He delivered that line. All right.
Yeah, boy did he.
Yeah, no, it's just I think that's like a big line everyone has been waiting for that's played the mm-hmm. games, and he killed it. Yeah. I mean, yeah, like from here on out, it's gonna be a roller coaster next week for sure.
Mm-hmm. I from the preview, this is where we're gonna see Ashley Johnson. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I cannot wait to see what they do with this episode. Yeah. This episode here was executed so brilliantly by everyone involved, including the actors. Mm-hmm. This was
top notch.
Like,
she could probably get an Emmy nomination for this episode. Mm-hmm. Like, I hope so, because it's good.
It is good. All right, guys, thank you so much for tuning in again to the Bros and Cons podcast. We'll be here next week with the final episode of season 1 of The Last of Us. Thanks for hanging with us so far, and we'll see you.
It's happening.